Hello, class. So, in this video, we will be learning benchmarking versus bench trending, TQM, and Six Sigma. So, let's start with benchmarking. Now, any performance standard viewed in isolation is of little value. It has to be compared in relation to a similar objective standards to bring out its relative position and serve as a yardstick for measurement of progress. So thus, for example, the turnover ratio of sales to capital employed can be studied over a period of time or as between different manufacturing plants of the same company to gauge the efficiency of asset utilization. So your own turnover ratio will be compared to another company having the same line of business to gauge your efficiency of asset utilization. While such insular evaluation have their utility, in a fiercely competitive environment, examination of one company's performance against a competing unit will afford meaningful insights into areas where the company is lagging behind. So, such an understanding will actually trigger action for improvement, at least to close the gap, if not to better it, for the company to survive and progress. In fact, such comparisons should be instituted against world class standards to attain excellence. In a market driven globalized economy characterized by intense contest, this process has become an imperative necessity and has gained immense popularity as a distinct management concept under the style of benchmarking. So, in essence, benchmarking is like improving ourselves through the example of others. So, the International Benchmarking Clearinghouse of American Productivity and Quality Center has given the definition of benchmarking. So, it is a systematic and continuous measurement process, a process of continuously comparing and measuring an organization's business processes against business leaders anywhere in the world to gain information that will help the organization take action to improve its performance. So, in short, in simple terms, benchmarking is a continuous process of enlisting the best practices in the world. Best practices in terms of process, goals, and objectives. And why do we list the best practices in order for us to achieve world-class levels of achievement? So a benchmark is a measure or it is a best in class achievement. This is a reference or measurement standard for comparison, a performance level recognized as the standard of excellence for a specific business practice. So, this best practice is what we call the benchmark. Okay, the benchmark. Now, the process of enlisting the best practices in the world is what we call benchmarking. So, it is actually the company ranked Xerox which pioneered this concept of benchmarking. So, here we have types of benchmarking. So there are different types of benchmarking that are listed here. We have six: product benchmarking, or we call it reverse engineering, competitive benchmarking, process benchmarking, internal benchmarking, strategic benchmarking, and global benchmarking. So let's discuss each of these types very briefly. So first we have product benchmarking, or aka reverse engineering. This is an age old practice of product oriented reverse engineering. So, di ba, every organization has its rivals. So, what we do under product benchmarking is that we will buy our rivals' products. And then we tear them down to find out how the features and performances, etc., compare with our own products. So we buy the products of our competitors and then we tear it down and examine it. This could be the starting point for improvement. Example, when Ford Motor Company redesigned the Taurus in 1992, it benchmarked 209 features on the car against 7 competitors. The company then worked to match or excel the higher standards set by any of its rival in each of these features with its own product. Okay, so that is product benchmarking. So in essence, product benchmarking is the process of buying our competitor's product, tear it down, and then look at the features, kung which features are better than ours, and then we will use that as a basis for our or a starting point for our improvement. The second type of benchmarking is competitive benchmarking. This is a measure of organizational performance compared against competing organization. It is a study that it studies the target specific product designs, process capabilities, or administrative methods used by a company's direct competitors. So competitive benchmarking move beyond product-oriented comparisons to include comparisons of process with those competitors. So for product benchmarking, we just focus on the product alone. No, katong what are the features of the product of our competitors, and then we will use it as a basis for our improvement. However, for competitive benchmarking, we move beyond product benchmarking. So we will not focus only on the product, but we have to look into the processes also with the competitors. So in this benchmarking, the process studied may include marketing, so how do they advertise their product, financing, human resource, research and development, etc. So a typical example would be the classical study of rank Xerox performed with those of Canon and other photocopier manufacturers when it faced heightened competition from US and Japanese companies. By benchmarking, rank Xerox achieved significant performance improvements. Like for example, it was able to um, reduce its unit manufacturing cost by half, and the machine defects within the company have improved by 90%. Then incoming parts acceptance has improved to 99.5%. Then there is also an improvement related to their inventory methods and engineering, as well as marketing. So again, for competitive benchmarking, it's more of a holistic type of benchmarking. You will not only focus on the product itself, but we have to look into the processes and compare it with our competitors. Next type is process benchmarking. This is the activity of measuring discrete performance and functionality against organizations through performance in excellent analogous business processes. So it's somehow the same with competitive benchmarking in a sense that it it is trying to study the processes of a certain company. However, for competitive benchmarking, what we do study is the process employed by our direct competitors. So only our competitors. But for process benchmarking, we do not look into our competitors alone. But however, we will look into the processes of any company that has a similar process than um that has the similar process of that same process that we are trying to study. For example, marketing strategies. So dili lang atong competitors atong tan-awon, but other companies that are very much successful in their marketing strategy. Okay, so that is the main difference between competitive benchmarking and process benchmarking. Here in process benchmarking, to gain leadership position, it is essential to look at a paradigm shifting jump. to a new way of managing process. For this, you may have to go beyond your industry, okay, not just those companies that are engaged in the same within the same industry, and you have to look at the best in the breed to bring about a fundamental change and not just an incremental improvement. Again, under process benchmarking, you have to study a company, and a company the that is employing the best process in relation to that certain process. So not just your competitor alone. Next, we have internal benchmarking. So, an application of process benchmarking performed within an organization by comparing the performance of similar business units or business processes. So, for internal benchmarking, from the name itself, internal, we need not look at other companies, but we have to look at our own company only. This is applicable if your company has different business units. So, for example, if you are a large corporation and you have different products and business units, for example, you have a business unit in beverage products, and then napod kay healthcare products and other products. So you will want to compare the processes and the performance of a specific business unit that you have, compare it to another business unit that you own. So for internal benchmarking, there is no need for us to look at the performance of other companies. Next, we have strategic benchmarking. This is the application of process benchmarking of the level of business strategy, a systematic process for evolving alternatives, implementing strategies, and improving performance by understanding and adopting successful strategy from external partners who participated in an ongoing business alliance. It will be seen that strategic benchmarking differs from operational benchmarking in its scope. It helps to develop a vision of the changed organizations. It will develop core competencies that will help sustain competitive advantage. So, for strategic benchmarking, from the root word strategy, we look at the entire strategy of the company as a whole, not just specific processes. So, mas broader siya in scope. But this is actually just coming from process benchmarking. So, from process benchmarking, from the data that you have gathered through process benchmarking, you now convert it into a strategy. Okay, and that is what we call strategic benchmarking. And then global benchmarking, this is defined as the extension of strategic benchmarking to include benchmarking partners on a global scale. So this is the broadened strategic benchmarking, because here we need we need not look only on the strategies of the companies that are within our geographical area, but we extend it to other companies around the globe. So thus the term global benchmarking. Okay, so but for benchmarking, what do we really need to benchmark? We can benchmark any activity, process, strategy, or operation. Pwede po product, right? So pwede product, process, activity, strategy, or operation. So those are the things that we can benchmark. Now, what are the stages in the process of benchmarking? So if we want to um, do benchmarking within our company, so what do we need to do? So we have here 5 stages. 5 stages in the process of benchmarking. Okay, first we have the planning stage. After planning, there is then collection of data and information. Then we have analysis of the findings based on the data collected in stage 2. We have formulation and implementation of recommendations. And then lastly is our constant monitoring and reviewing. So let's look at stage 1 first. Stage 1 is planning. So under planning, we have these steps. Okay, step 1 is the determination of benchmarking goal statement. This actually requires the identification of areas to be benchmarked. So what do we want to benchmark? Okay, and then what is our goal? So we have to determine our benchmarking goal statement. So for example, if the area to be benchmarked is customer satisfaction. So what are the things under that area that we want to benchmark? So for example, we want to benchmark the consistency of the product, or if we are not into the selling of products, if we are into the provision of services, we can also look into the consistency of the service. Then we can also look at the process cycle time, delivery performance, or our responsiveness to customer requirements. Okay? And then second step under planning is the identification of best performance. So this next step is actually the process of seeking the best. We have to look for the best because again, diba, going back to the definition of benchmarking, we are actually trying to list the best practices. So the next step will be to seek the best. Now, to arrive at the best is actually both expensive and time consuming. So, it is better to identify a company which already has a recorded performance success in a similar area. Katong mga companies that are already very famous. So, para mas dali lang nato makuha ang ato ang information about that best company. Then third step under planning is the establishment of the benchmarking or process improvement team, because this is not a one man task. Okay, you need to form a team which should include persons who are most knowledgeable about the internal operations of the company and will be directly affected by changes due to benchmarking. Since benchmarking requires the comparison of our own performance versus another company's performance, no, the members of the team that should perform benchmarking must be those persons that are also knowledgeable sa atong own performance. Because how can they compare the performance of our own firm if they do not have knowledge, diba, of our internal operations? Next, under planning will be the defining of the relevant benchmarking measures. Now, relevant measures will not be restricted to include the measures used by the firm today, but they will be refined into measures that comprehend the true performance differences. So, how are we able to gauge what are the measures that we want to use? How are we able to evaluate our performance with respect to the company with the best practice, with the performance of that company? Next stage will be the collection of data and information. So after the planning stage, we now proceed to the groundwork. So this is on the collection of data and information. So first, we need to compile information and data on performance, then select and contact our partners, develop a mutual understanding about the procedures to be followed, and if necessary, prepare a benchmarking protocol with partners. This benchmarking protocol is actually like a contract with our partners. Then prepare questions and agree on terminologies and performance measures to be used. Distribute a schedule of questions to each partner. Ang schedule of questions, dili na siya schedule like calendar schedule. Schedule of questions meaning a list of questions. You have to give them a copy. Our partners must be given a copy. And then undertake information and data collection by chosen methods. So in the actual collection of data, we can use interviews, site visits, telephone interviews, or we can fax them our questions and then they can also fax their answers to us, or we can also do it through email. The third stage will be the analysis of the findings based on the data collected in stage 2. So after we have gathered all the necessary information, we now proceed to analyze these information. First, we need to review the findings and then we produce tables, charts, and graphs to support the analysis. Identify gaps in performance between our firm and better performers. So, which aspects ang nagkalahian sa atoa? And then, next is we seek explanations for the gaps in performance. Nganong lahi man taaning dapita? Okay? So, for letter B, this answers the question what. So, what aspects ang nagkalahi sa atoa? And then for letter C, the third step is to understand why. Why is there a gap? Now, the performance gaps can be positive, negative, or zero. Next is to ensure that comparisons are meaningful and credible because we do not want to have an output nga for academic purposes lang. So, the output that we should come up must be meaningful and useful, right? Or else our efforts will be put to waste. Then after, we communicate findings to those who are affected and then identify realistic opportunities for improvements. So based on our analysis, um, what are the opportunities for improvement? And then after identifying our opportunities, then we now formulate the specific recommendations. Formulation and implementation of recommendations. So when we speak of formulating, this is the process of deciding the feasibility of making the improvements in the light of conditions that apply within our own firm. So we convert it into a specific course of actions that are really applicable sa given the circumstances of our own firm. Then agreement on the improvements that are likely to be feasible. So we have to agree which ones are feasible para mauna siya ang ato ang i-implement. Producing a report on benchmarking in which recommendations are included. Obtaining the support of owners or management for making the changes needed because without their support, we cannot implement our suggestions. Because, um, 'di ba, our goal is to improve our company's performance. So, most likely, our recommendations will entail additional costs. And if the owners or the management will not support our recommendations, then there will be no funding. Walay funds for the recommendations. So we have to get their support. Developing action plan or plans for implementation. And then when we speak of implementing or implementation, this is the actual implementation of our action plans. Then we have to also keep owners or management informed of the progress. We have to um, give them progress reports. And then the last stage will be constant monitoring and reviewing. So after the initial implementation of our recommendations, we have also to monitor. Dili lang kay mahunong na ta. So after implementing, we have to constantly monitor and review the results after the implementation. So under this stage, we have to evaluate the benchmarking process undertaken and the results of the improvements against objectives and success criteria, plus the overall efficiency and effectiveness of the firm. We also have to document the lessons learned and make them available to others, especially with our partners. Then we have to periodically reconsider the benchmarks for continuous improvement. Okay, this last step is very important because what is true today may not be true next year or next year. So for example, we came up with a certain recommendation, and when we tried to implement that recommendation, successful ta. But if successful ta at that first instance, it doesn't always mean nga the same recommendation, if constantly implemented, will give us the same result over and over again. So we have to periodically reconsider the benchmarks. Okay, now we have here prerequisites of benchmarking. When we say prerequisites, that means we need to have these things before we can perform um, a good benchmarking. First, we have commitment. We need to have commitment. Commitment from kinsa nga mga persons. From the owners and the senior managers. They should support benchmarking fully and must be committed to continuous improvements. Next, we need to have clarity of objectives. So the objectives should be clearly defined at the preliminary stage. In fact, sa ato ang stage 1 under planning, di ba, there we have to define or determine what are our goals and objectives. It must be clear. Okay? The benchmarking teams must have a clear picture of their own firm's performance before approaching others for comparisons. Then we need to have an appropriate scope. The scope of work should be appropriate in the light of the objectives, resources, time available, and the experience level of those involved. So ang scope must not be too broad, okay? And must not be too general. It must be um in consonance with our objectives and how much are our available resources, how competitive or how skillful are the members of the benchmarking team. So, mura ba og dapat reasonable lang. Then, another prerequisite is a resource or resources. We must have sufficient resources available in order for us to complete the project within the required time scale. Next, we have skills. Of course, the benchmarking teams should have the appropriate skills and competencies. Okay, if they don't have any know-how as to how to go about with the benchmarking, then ma-fail lang ato ang benchmarking. And lastly, we have communication. Stakeholders and also staff and their representatives are to be kept informed of the reasons for benchmarking. And then we discuss difficulties in the implementation of benchmarking. So that is what these are the reasons why not all companies are actually um, doing benchmarking. Okay, first it is time consuming. Benchmarking is time consuming and at times very difficult. It has significant requirement of staff time and company resources. Because of course, you need to assign persons, di ba, within the benchmarking teams, and then they must devote their time to come up with the proper benchmarking. So you need to also pay them their salaries. Next, we have lack of management support. Since the commitment is part of the prerequisite of benchmarking. Without this, it will be very difficult for us to implement benchmarking. So, benchmarking implementation requires the direct involvement of all managers. If there is lack of management support, then it would be very difficult for us. Then, resistance from employees. It is likely that there may be resistance from employees, especially those employees that are um, dugay na kaayo sa company, 'di ba? They like the things they like things as they are. Dili sila ganahan mausab mo yung sila mo naman ni mong naandan nganong ganahan pa mo pailisan pa di among gibuhat. Okay, so there might be resistance from employees. And then paper goals. So sometimes we are too much confined with the goal sa paper, no? Wala na to gitanaw ang actual implementation niya, actual effects. Usually mabukish ta, so that's why it is also very difficult. We become too much preoccupied with our paper goals. And then sometimes there is this copy paste attitude. Now, the key element in benchmarking is the adaptation of the best practice to tailor it to a company's need and culture. Without that step, a company merely adopts another company's process. Now, although we point out, diba, the best practices of other companies, we are not expected to actually just copy them. Nga copy paste lang. We need to tweak it a little bit in order for that best practice to be applicable to our own company. So pareha ra gud nang naa kay body goals. So you look at a certain person nga very very sexy and so on. So you study unsa ilang gibuhat and ana nganong na-achieve na nila ilahang body, but then you don't copy it entirely. You have to adjust it para mo fit siya sa imong own circumstance. Alright? So if companies just do a copy paste attitude, we cannot expect their performance to improve the way they want it to improve. Okay, so is there a difference between bench trending and benchmarking? So, while the benefits of benchmarking are quite impressive, it results in the benchmarking partner to be forever in a catch-up situation. So, for example, there is this better company than yours, so mura kag sige apas niya. And then, we cannot expect that better company to just remain as is. They will also improve. So, sige ra kag apas niya, di jud nimo siya maapsan. Right? So, if you just do benchmarking, sige ra kag apas. The better partner will not stand still, but will be looking continuously for ways to improve his own performance. Thus, it becomes imperative for an organization to continuously do a pest scan. Pest meaning we have to monitor the developments in the political, economic, social, and technological fronts, and identify future gaps that may be created by the significant market changes, customer preferences, innovation threats, new entrants, and other environmental variables critical to the long term success of the firm. So, in short, if benchmarking is just looking at our past performance, nga, kumusta man ta as compared to the better company. Bench trending, on the other hand, looks at the future. We look at the potential effects of the political activities of the government, the economic status. We do forecasting, okay, for bench trending. We don't just look at our past performance, but we also have to look at the future events that might affect the performance of our organization. So such trend studies are known as bench trending, which is similar to benchmarking but with a structural dimension. Now there are two types of bench trending rather. We have strategic bench trending and the operations or process bench trending. Strategic bench trending is used to set direction for a business unit, set direction because diba strategy. And then operations or process bench trending is used to identify the technological trends and steps initiated to bridge the gaps in the current performance levels. So in short, benchmarking versus bench trending, are they the same? No, they are not the same. Benchmarking is the process of evaluating the business performance with the standard business metrics of the industry. So evaluate na to atong past performance. On the other hand, bench trending is used for monitoring the performance and operations for bringing improvements and setting a direction. We don't just focus on our past performance, but rather we monitor it and then we look into the future as to what events could affect the performance of our own company. Okay, so that's all for benchmarking and bench trending. Now we proceed to TQM. Okay, so TQM is an active approach encompassing a company wide philosophy and system for continuous improvement of quality. So, total quality management. So, we focus on quality. So, what is our goal with respect to quality? Our goal is to continuously improve our quality. Continuous improvement of quality. Now, this demands cooperation from everyone in the company. So under TQM, we have here the eight universal principles. Now, kaning eight universal principles of TQM, we relate this to ISOs. I'm sure you have heard of ISOs, no, ISO certified, something like that. So chances are, if someone asks you about ISO, for example, ISO 9001 certification, you look at them blankly. No, but the principles set out by this certification are actually in use in pretty much every modern business. So, what are the universal quality management principles and where do they come from? They're set out by the ISO. ISO stands for International Standard for Organizations. Again, ISO, International Standard for Organizations, which has been developing guiding principles to protect businesses from fatal errors since its foundation in 1947. ISO 9001 is the catchy name for its Quality Management System Standards model, which was introduced in 1994. The most current version, which came into force in 2015, was adopted to address new regulatory requirements and improve on the previous model. So if we can hear nga, this company is ISO certified, that means that nindot ang quality kuno sa ilahang products. Okay, kuno. But as consumers, we must be very worried. No, kay nga no. Because these certifications, pwede man sad gud siya mapalit. I mean, ma-under the table ba? There is no actual inspection. Ibayran lang para matagaan kag certification, which defeats the purpose. But let's face it, that's reality. But in a perfect world, no, in a perfect world, if a company is issued an ISO certification, we, the consumers or the customers, are assured ko no that the products are of quality, good quality. So the principles set out by the ISO 9001 were invented in the 1990s by a small group of experts who created them using the philosophical teachings and business know-how of the previous century. Now let's take a look at each of them in detail. The first universal principle is customer focus. This is the first and most important principle because a business wouldn't exist without its customers. Therefore, organizations should strive to understand their current and future customers in order to better meet their requirements and expectations. The key benefits of cultivating good customer relationships include an increased market share and boost to revenue, as well as improved customer loyalty. Remember in the I think we discussed customer relationship management, okay? So i-relate na nato din ha. If your company is seen as understanding and reacting appropriately to consumer demand, the success of your business is pretty much guaranteed. So it's worth paying close attention to this principle. And then second universal principle of quality management is leadership. So this principle extols the virtues of strong, purposeful, and unifying leadership. Leaders are responsible for creating a productive and progressive business environment. They are also in charge of ensuring that future hires maintain that as atmosphere. Implementing this principle in your workplace relies upon having an established vision for the business, as well as the right leaders in place to promote that vision to the rest of the team. Spending some time getting this right from the get go will save you time and stress in the future. So, of course, we need to have very supportive leaders within the management team in order for us to actually make sure the performance and the processes as well as the products of the company are above standards. Then third principle is people involvement. So just as your business would be nowhere without a customer base, it also wouldn't get very far without a balanced, multi-skilled team either. So the people referred to here are our employees. Okay. So employees at every level of the organization are crucial to its success. And this principle is all about recognizing that. As an employer, it's vital to ensure that your team are motivated and engaged, not just in their day to day responsibilities, but also in the company as a whole. For this to happen, staff need to understand the importance of the role and how it fits into their wider company objectives, as well as take responsibility for any problems that might impede them from doing their job to the best of their abilities. So again, people involvement is um related to the competency of your employees. So as an employee, you need to make sure that your employees are motivated and they know the reasons why they do their tasks in relation to the overall objective of the firm. And then fourth principle, we have the process approach. A process driven approach can help companies to avoid logistical problems that often stem from confusion over the right way to go about things. It also future proofs your business as having set processes ensures that there's no moment of flat panic when a key team member moves on, leaving everyone in the dark about key elements of their job. Developing processes for every area of your business, from sales to marketing, finance to HR, will ensure that resources are used most effectively, resulting in cost effective and consistent results. It also allows you to dedicate time and attention to bigger and more exciting tasks. The fifth principle is systematic approach to management. So this principle is linked to the previous one and argues that identifying, understanding, and managing processes using a clear system will help to streamline your business. By ensuring that team members are dedicating the right amount of attention to key tasks, you will eliminate wasted time and make your business more efficient. Sixth principle is continuous improvement. As the old adage goes, if you're not going forwards, you're going backwards. A business should always be pushing for improvements because if you're not, you can bet that your competitors will be. So, continuous improvement, which is actually the basis of total quality management. Then, seventh principle is the factual approach to decision making. This principle states that effective decisions are made based on rational analysis of data. Whilst a gut feeling can be useful in some situations, it won't really stand up when you're explaining to your board of investors why your profits are, let's say, down by 10% this year. So you need not um you have to have a hard data in order for you to explain the reasons why your performance is like this. Dili pwede siya based on feelings. Or feel lang nako or I think. No, di pwede I think. Dapat naa jud kay evidence. Then, principle number 8, mutually beneficial supplier relations. Okay, this is where our supply chain management comes in. You need to establish better supplier relations because eventually the quality of raw materials supplied to us by our suppliers will reflect on the quality of our finished product. So if bati ang quality sa raw materials nga gihatag sa ato ang suppliers, then obviously bati isad ang quality sa ato ang finished good. Okay. Next, we study the three concepts of TQM. We have the quality control. Quality control deals with the past. Quality assurance deals with the present, and quality management deals with the future. Okay, so here are the stages or steps to be taken in the implementation of TQM. Stage 1 is the identification of customers or customer groups. Kinsa ato ang target customers. For example, if ang target customers nato is women lang ba? Or katong persons within the working class? Or kinsa man mga dato nga persons? Unsa ba? So, atong i-identify kinsa ato ang customers or customer groups. Then we need to identify our customer expectations in relation to our product quality. And then identification of customer decision making requirements and product utilities. So, how do customers decide which product to buy? Would they look at prices? Would they look at the size of the product? Would they look at the packaging of the product? So, ato na siyang tanawon. And then identification of perceived problems in decision making process and product utilities based on our stage number 3. And then comparison with other organizations and benchmarking. So we can actually use benchmarking as part of our TQM. Then customer feedback. So we study the feedback of our customers with regard to our um prices, with regard to our packaging, with regard to our delivery, for example. Then step 7 is the identification of improvement opportunity. So which aspect do we need to improve? Basin bati ang ato ang um, packaging or basin delayed kay ang atong delivery. So it will also form part of the quality of our product. Then we have identification. Oh, sorry. Yeah. It's stage 8, quality improvement process through the determination of new strategies, elimination of deficiencies, and identifying solutions. So basically, for TQM, what we need to understand is the goal of TQM, and that is to continuously improve our quality. Quality of the product that we sell. Or if you are a service oriented entity, the quality of the service. So how do we know that nindot ang quality sa ato ang service or nindot ang quality sa ato ang product? If naatay nindot nga customer feedback. So you have to understand the psychology of our customers nga. What are the basis for them used by them to decide which product ang nindot, which product ang quality para sa ilaha or not. Okay, and then here, lastly, we have Six Sigma. Six Sigma is a set of practices originally developed by Motorola to systematically improve processes by eliminating defects. So this is actually just a part of our TQM concept, diba? For TQM, we continuously improve the quality. So how do we improve quality? By eliminating defects. We have to make sure nga dili defective ang ato ang products. What is a defect? A defect is defined as non-conformity of a product or service to its specifications. While the particulars of the methodology were originally formulated by Bill Smith at Motorola in 1986, Six Sigma was heavily inspired by six preceding decades of quality improvement methodologies such as quality control, TQM, and zero defects. So, like its predecessor, Six Sigma asserts the following: continuous efforts to reduce variation in process outputs is the key to business process. So, dapat daw, to improve our quality, we have to make sure nga i-minimize or if possible, eliminate defects. Kaya 'di ba, if you are also the customer, if you are receiving a defective product, dili ko unsa naman imong tan-aw ani nga company ba't di ilahang quality no kay defective. Okay, so mo na ang goal sa Six Sigma is to eliminate defects. Then manufacturing and business processes can be measured, analyzed, improved, and controlled. Succeeding at achieving sustained quality improvement requires commitment from the entire organization, particularly from top-level management. So, essentially, ang principles around Six Sigma will always go back to the eight universal principles of TQM. The term Six Sigma refers to the ability of highly capable processes to produce output within specification. In particular, processes that operate with Six Sigma quality produce at defect levels below 3.4 defects per 1 million opportunities. So DPMO is defects per million opportunities. Six Sigma's implicit goal is to improve all processes to that level of quality or better. So here for Six Sigma quality, dapat daw ang defect is below 3.4 defects per 1 million opportunities. Kamay kaayo no. Six Sigma is a registered service mark and trademark of Motorola Incorporated. Motorola has reported over 17 billion US dollars in savings from Six Sigma as of 2006. In addition to Motorola, companies that adopted Six Sigma methodologies early on and continue to practice it today include Honeywell International and General Electric. So, what are the methodologies under the Six Sigma? We have actually two methodologies. Remember these two? DMAIC and DMADV. These letters actually represent something. So, again, the two methodologies are the DMAIC and DMADV. These are both inspired by Deming's Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. The Plan, Do, Check, Act, we will discuss this later on. DM, DMAIC is used to improve an existing business process, while DMADV is used to create new product or process designs for predictable defect-free performance. So DMIC again is for existing or present, whatever is present, and then DMADV is for new ones. So let's look at the first methodology. We have the DMAIC. So what does it represent? Define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. Thus the letters DMAIC. So first is to define. What to define? Define the process improvement goals that are consistent with customer demands and enterprise strategy. Next is to measure the current process and collect relevant data for future comparison. A is for analyze. Analyze to verify relationship and causality of factors, determine what the relationship is, and attempt to ensure that all factors have been considered. Then improve. Improve or optimize the process based upon the analysis using techniques like design of experiments. And then lastly is to control to ensure that any variances are corrected before they result in defects. Set up pilot runs to establish process capability, transition to production, and thereafter continuously measure the process and institute control mechanisms. So again, the first methodology under Six Sigma is DMAIC: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. Next, we have DMADV. So DMADV stands for define. So but this the same na define but lahi ilang gi-define here. Define the goals of the design activity that are consistent with customer demands and enterprise strategy. For DMAIC, what we define here is the process. Here are here for DMADV, what we define are the goals. Next is M. M is to measure. Measure and identify CTQs or critical to qualities, product capabilities, production process capability, and risk assessments. Then A, the same, analyze. Analyze to develop and design alternatives, create high-level design, and evaluate design capability to select the best design. Next is to design. Design details, optimize the design, and plan to design verification. Because again, remember for DMADV, this is for new products. New products. So we have to decide on the design. So this phase may require simulations. Then lastly is to verify. Verify the design, set up pilot runs, implement production processes, and hand over to process owners. So some people have actually used DMA ICR. So it's a variation of the first methodology, which is DMA IC. So but we added R here, R for realize. Others contend that focusing on the financial gains realized through Six Sigma is counterproductive and that said financial gains are simply byproducts of a good process improvement. Now, under Six Sigma daw, we don't just focus on the financial goals. Nga. Dapat inani kadaka ang ako ang income because they believe that for Six Sigma, a good income will just follow if you just have a good quality of products. So if nindot ang quality sa inyong products, then naapod mo dako manindot pud ang inyong income. So here are the key rules required for successful implementation of Six Sigma. Somehow more siya og kaning sa karate siguro ni. Okay, we have master black belts and so on. So first, let's look at executive leadership. This includes CEO and other key top management team members. So the executive leadership are responsible for setting up a vision for Six Sigma implementation. They also empower the other role holders with the freedom and resources to explore new ideas for breakthrough improvements. So more on the vision, setting up of a vision. Next, we have the champions. Champions are responsible for the Six Sigma implementation across the organization in an integrated manner. The executive leadership, kaning sa number one, draws them from the upper management. Champions also act as mentors to black belts. At General Electric, kanto nga company, General Electric Company, this level of certification is now called quality leader. So who will choose kinsa ang champions? The executive leadership. So they will choose the champions from the upper management. Then we have the master black belts. These are persons identified by the champions to act as in-house expert coaches for the organization on Six Sigma. They devote 100% of their time to Six Sigma. They assist champions and guide black belts and green belts. Apart from the usual rigor of statistics, their time is spent on ensuring integrated deployment of Six Sigma across various functions and departments. So they provide assistance to champions, okay? Kani si master black belts. Then we have experts. Experts, this level of skill is used primarily within aerospace and defense business sectors. Experts work across company boundaries, improving services, processes, and products for their suppliers, their entire campuses, and for their customers. So an example will be kaning si Raytheon Incorporated. This was actually one of the first companies to introduce experts to their organizations. So at this company, Raytheon, experts work not only across multiple sites but across business divisions, incorporating lessons learned throughout the company. Then we have black belts. Black belts operate under master black belts. to apply Six Sigma methodology to specific projects. So ang scope of work of black belts are limited as compared to the master black belts. So for black belts, they only apply Six Sigma methodology to specific projects. They devote 100% of their time to Six Sigma. They primarily focus on Six Sigma project execution, whereas champions and master black belts focus on identifying the project or functions for Six Sigma. So, the actual project execution is under the responsibility of black belts, while kaning silang champions and master black belts focus only on identifying which project. They just identify, and then ang mo execute is the black belt. Then we have green belts. Green belts are the employees who take up Six Sigma implementation along with their other job responsibilities. So, as compared to black belts, kaning si green belts, they have other responsibilities within the organization. So, their 100% of the time is not solely dedicated to Six Sigma. It's just that Six Sigma is just one of their responsibilities. They operate under the guidance of black belts and support them in achieving the overall results. Yellow belts. Yellow belts are employees who have been training pa under training, trained in Six Sigma techniques as part of a corporate-wide initiative, but have not completed a Six Sigma project and are not expected to actively engage in quality improvement activities. Okay, then we have the 5 S's concept in quality management. This is still based on Japanese concepts. Now, first S, we have Seiri, or organization or reorganization. Then the second S is Seiton, which literally means neatness. Then Seiso, cleaning. Seiketsu is standardization, and Shitsuke for discipline. So let's briefly describe each of the S's. So the literal meaning of the Japanese word seiri is to straighten and contain. It can be understood as this: we have to discard unnecessary things. Discard unnecessary things. So that is, we get rid of waste and put things in such a way as to have quick access. So this is how we straighten and contain. Now, this is how we interpret it. So if we apply this idea, kaning seiri, to a factory, office, house, farm, or shop, waste of time in searching for an item and having unnecessary things taking up space will be reduced. Organization meaning we have to organize properly so that when we need something, we can look for it easily. Because if makakaibawasan na siya pangitaon, then it will be a waste of time. Okay, so that is seiri. So it's like developing a system that can bring consistency in what we do. Like for this item, you know where to find it. Then Seiri thus means organization, or more appropriately, reorganization. The practice of Seiri involves several steps, and they are: first, planning and training, method of sorting, categorization, survey, cleaning. Then we have to decide on the scope of the operation, to get ready, define objectives, and teach people to recognize what is unnecessary, what to discard, what things to save so that they can be accessed later. Put red tag for unnecessary items, and yellow tags for the items to be sent to stores. Apply stratification management. Okay, the next S is Seiton. So while Seiri helps us to decide what are the items needed, Seiton helps to decide the way things are to be placed so that our working is smooth. So Seiton involves safety and productivity. 3 rules to be followed for this are the following. First, we need to decide where things need to be placed. Keep things in that place. So once you decide where things are to be placed, keep things in that place. And then always follow the system. In short, a place for a thing and the thing in its place. Points to be remembered under Satan are the following: keeping things in the best way, what to keep, where to keep, how to keep, and how much to keep, how much of it to keep. Having ground rules for organizing things neatly, marking areas and cautions, proper place for things. So if this is a tool, then this goes this area. If this is a consumable thing, this goes to another area. If this is a defective item, so where to store this? If this is an emergency item, where to store this? Okay, and then we have say so. Say so, the literal meaning of this is to clean up. It means take up the job of cleaning. So such cleaning actually is not restricted merely to machines, cleaning tables, kitchen cabinet, etc. That is, whichever we have taken up. It should be extended to the entire surroundings. Cleaning is getting rid of bad things and purifying. Cleaning first calls for an inspection. So you need to inspect first and then acting on it. The essence of cleaning is not just making things or place clean. Thorough cleaning will help us to quickly detect or see defects with our eyes. So, for example, if we hear abnormal sound, okay, we observe abnormal sound, we can see that something is wrong. Or by touching it with our hands, we can feel some vibration sa isa ka machinery. Or we can also feel the temperature of that machinery. So we can say that that might be defective. Observation by looking, listening, and feeling at the time of cleaning can identify abnormalities like abnormal smell, discoloration, loose parts, abnormal sounds, overheating, leaks and dispersion, vibration and shaking, misses and skipping, irregular movement, abrasion, trash and dirt, damage, etc. So these can be quickly discovered and attended to. Hence, we can say so is to reveal potential defects. So points to be remembered under say so. Who should do the cleaning? Is it a separate function? Then assigning roles and responsibilities, providing implements and tools for cleaning, making say so a day-to-day routine, care of special and sophisticated equipment, education on Seiso. Next S is Seiketsu. Now, Seiri, Seiton, and Seiso are very easy to do once. If kausa lang nimo buhaton, let's say Seiso sa kausa lang, very easy. But it is very difficult to maintain. Now, to maintain, we have to standardize the system. Seiketsu is nothing but standardization. In the five S's, this means ensuring whatever cleanliness and orderliness have been achieved through Seiri, Seiton, and Seiso, they have to be maintained. We should keep a strict control over the situation. We cannot achieve this by one-time effort of carrying out the activities of cleaning. We should make sure that whatever is achieved is not allowed to deteriorate. If we face any problem, our capabilities coupled with the system should be able to overcome that problem. Therefore, Seiketsu is only complete when its horizons have been expanded to include the entire working environment. So, what are the points to be considered or remembered here under Seiketsu? You have standardization is to systematize. So, in order for us to achieve standardization, we have to implement a specific system. Knowledge of putting the finger of the troubled spots, imparting knowledge systematically, visual management, sensory alertness and control, position marking, ways of promotion of Seiketsu, incentive at workshop level, incentive at the factory level. And then the last S is Shitsuke. This means discipline. Discipline is following a system. So once we have a system, we must be able to follow it all throughout. So how do we able how are we able to follow the system all the time? We need to have discipline. So this calls for changing from our present unsystematic way of adherence to set procedures. Systems function in an orderly manner. If you make the task of bringing changes as teamwork, you will find it easier. 'Di ba mas dali man buhaton kung daghan mo nagbuhat kaysa kung ikaw lang. It is due to two reasons. One, instead of as an individual, if you do things as a team, it becomes fun, right? And not a work that is disliked. Secondly, if the job is difficult, teamwork makes it easier. The tougher the job, the easier the teamwork makes it. The points to be remembered for Shitsuke are the following: routine and complacency, make the task small or big a habit, instructions or communications should be clear. Okay, and then the last topic will be the different types of quality costs. Okay, we have first internal quality cost, and then the second is user quality costs. When we say internal quality costs, these are quality costs of quality assurance incurred by the manufacturer, internal to the manufacturer alone. Attributable, these are costs of quality assurance that are attributable to the manufacturer alone. So thus the term internal quality costs. And what are these? We have prevention costs, appraisal costs, and failure costs. And then lastly, we have user quality costs. So user quality, because these are the costs of quality assurance at the user's end. So the categories of user quality costs are the following. We have cost of repairs. It could be that there are parts or the material itself are considered failed items. So we need to repair, we must replace the defective parts or items. And then we also have to incur labor for replacing the failed items. So for example, if you bought a cell phone but the cell phone is defective, and then you have to return it to the service centers, so they need to replace a specific defective part, and then someone will also work on it, so the company will have to incur labor costs. Cost of effectiveness loss. This is, for example, the idle direct labor. When we say idle direct labor, walay gamit ba? Wa sila gitrabaho. Bisag wa sila gitrabaho, they're still entitled to salary. So that is also cost on our part. Extra defective products made before, during, and immediately after the process shutdown. So these defective products are actually caused by our process shutdown. So if we have a process shutdown in our uh, company, then there might be some products that will be produced as defective. Then, cost of maintaining extra capacity because of expected failure. So, katong mga reserba na to, for mga reserba, we also have to incur costs related to them. We need to have spare equipment. So, for the cost of the spare equipment, that is a cost that we have to incur. Then, mga reserba nga persons. So, mo na siya si direct and indirect labor. Cost of damages caused by a failed item. So, if it results to injuries to personnel, say for example, naay defect sa ato ang machineries, kunya na-injure ang ato ang personnel dito sa factory, that's also part of our cost of quality assurance. training new personnel when a replacement is required. Then lost income, profit on production loss during downtime of failed item. Now, if there is a failed item, we need to do some rework. If we do rework, then we use the machineries that we have. Instead of producing new products, the machines will be used to repair the product. So wala tay bag-o nga na-produce during that time. So that is actually tantamount to lost income on our part, which is still part of our costs of quality assurance. Okay. Now, I have a short quiz in Canvas based on the discussions. You may also open your notes while answering the quiz. Okay? Sige.